when you study ancient history, as I have and others have, I'm not saying this is about me, you find out that when they're upturning or they're digging, revealing, exposing ancient artifacts throughout history in the different levels of the earth, there are always symbols that cannot be identified as, oh, gee, that's Paleo-Hebrew, that's Akkadian, oh, that looks like it's cuneiform, that looks like it's Sanskrit. There are so many things that people try and put into a understanding of their current framework that they can't understand what's outside that framework. What basically has turned up in the digs in Mexico and the alien Aztec artifacts and the 14 different sites and the 4 different archaeologists from 4 different countries that are there now, and trying to balance out how to get carbon dating and other forms of dating, is this. The alien presence was long before the Aztec presence, and the Aztecs started slaughtering humans at all of their major monuments. If you look at the pyramids, both on Mars and other places in the universe, both under the seas and every place else they're found, you find a continuity. You find a period of pre-Adamic or prior to the creation, Genesis 1:1-1-2. There's a war going on. One smart aleck sent me thinking, oh, no, by the way, Steve, this is after one of your shows, the Earth is only 6,000 years old. I have no problem with the Earth 6,000 years being recreated, but that's the post that's before it was recreated. I mean, the Sumerian Table of Kings go back 450,000 years, and these are all talking about entities other than humans that built cities, lived on the planet, and experimented with genetic alteration.
Can I stop you right there? Because that's such a great, and I don't mean to dumb this down for people who are really know what you're talking about, Steve. But when I first kind of was introduced to you, it took me there was a learning curve that I'm slow in learning sometimes. There was a learning curve in there. The Earth is older than 6,000 years old, admittedly, right? But
yes.
But okay, so just walk me through that. Yeah, 6,000 years for the current civilization. How do you say that?
Okay. Well, the easiest way to do it is go to the first, a couple of sentences in Genesis, the book of Genesis. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And then it goes into the narrative from that about God creating everything in its proper order. But one of the commands was to go and replenish the earth. So many words are fought over in the ancient language to dismiss what's called the gap theory. And I tell people, hey, forget the gap theory. It's pre-Adam and post-Adam. We are the descendants of Adam and Eve. God did something special. Whatever was created, angels and the civilizations they built. And oh, by the way, we're talking about fallen angels having been, and I'm talking fallen angels now, fallen angels having been in the presence of Almighty God from the time they were brought forth, I won't say created, but brought forth, and understanding the mysteries of God, seeing the mysteries of God, and then basically when they chose to rebel, to come to earth and to build their civilizations, okay? So, that period precedes the period of Genesis 1:1-1-2. That's what brought about the destruction. Why is that so hard? It's not either or, it's both.
Thank you.
Jeremiah, and so Doug, here's the deal. Jeremiah, the flood in Jeremiah chapter 4 predates Noah's flood, so God destroyed the earth twice by flood. Right. Once before the recreation of the earth and once after the recreation of the earth. And everything died, but not all the fallen angels nor their progeny, because we know a lot of them went to the outer limits of space. How they got there, on what kind of spaceship, with what kind of propulsion, or were there certain groups of angels that still could jump space with wormholes and with stargates? I'm trying to formulate that right now for everyone. But the idea is simply this. You cannot look at Cyclopean pre-flood architecture prior to the Noah's flood and say that normal human beings built that, nor do I accept the fact that the Great Pyramid of Giza, the Pyramid of Cheops, Khufu, and Menkuri, the three of them, are built by human beings, Hebrew slaves using inclined planes, plenty of logs to roll. It just doesn't work that way. So a narrative to mislead Earth's population has put into place, while those who know the real history of the world, which I believe is one of the purposes of Branson, is to show you've been lied to. And if they'll lie to you about that, and here's the bottom line, I'll turn right back to you, then why are they lying to you? For what purpose? And answering the alien question in Branson, Missouri, September 11th through the 13th, is that critical. It's really important. And by the way, it's 13th, 14th, and 15th. We are being, here you go, a new word for Doug Hagman, we are being technologically beheaded, only to be followed at a later date by literally beheaded. We've got cannibalism being proposed by a group of academics. Yeah, they're all the baby butchers sitting around drinking human blood, eating human parts, baby parts. People don't like that. I'm sorry for my nose itching. I got you got to trim my mustache. We've got people sitting around talking about cannibalism. Remember the story of Soylent Green? Yep. Soylent Green are people, But now we've got a situation that's going on that's very, very problematic. And the pushing of cannibalism, the pushing of the fact that it might be kosher. And I want to hammer this, Doug, because, again, when you hear me talking about this, it's not because some guy ate smoked zombie juice or snorted zombie dust in Florida and wanted to eat somebody's face off. We're talking about practices that have been in the occult world and the elite world since mankind fell. The Canaanites destroyed their children. They just turned up in Peru, the biggest burial ground of infant murder, slaughter. They'll call it sacrifice. Let's just skip the BS. They butchered their children. And notice how those empires didn't last, did they? No,
not at all. And now you were referencing, and I think folks, for those watching, if you go to, I think your website, but also the source document was, I think the UK Sun, maybe, I don't know, sun.uk, but anyway, about the cannibalism and about how that relates to the normalization of cannibalism, which I mean, my goodness, 10 years ago, you would think you would call us crazy for talking about this 10 years ago, 15 years ago. But you were on top of things. I just want to tell you that.
Well, 25 years ago when I said that on one of the first radio shows, and look, when I make statements like this is a historic declaration. It is not an ego. It has nothing to do with narcissism. I'm warning ahead of time. The people that are taking credit for it now, my question to them is, when they say whatever they want to say, but my question is, where were you 25 years ago? The two things that God spoke to my heart about that were more important than anything, and actually the third that I always leave out, I'll get to that, when cannibalism fills the headlines of the day and the major volcanoes of the earth simultaneously erupt, know that tribulation has started. He also told me that the Catholic war will go to war within the church. First, it will be fought with words. Later, it will be fought with weapons. You know the story now that basically the elite forced the stepping down of the previous pope so that they could bring on this pope to introduce their one world religion, one world government. If people, Doug, cannot see the validity, this is whether you believe in God or not, at least God is believing enough in you to say, I honor free will because I created it, but I want to present you with some facts. And most people in America say, don't confuse me with facts. My mind is made up. No, your mind is altered. So few now can even have any rational thinking, and so few can even come to natural conclusions. I mean, do you really think that there isn't such a thing as weather warfare, even though you've got secretaries of defense, hundreds of patents? Do you really think when Katy Perry, by her own admission, is on record as stating she loves to eat she eats human flesh or meat, the last taboo, do you really think listening to the WW Satan Live on Hollywood, on the majority of the stars, not all of them, who are embracing the most evil, wicked things. And now all of a sudden on Drudge, I see that, the story about Eyes Wide Shut and the mystery surrounding Stanley Kubrick and his unusual death. Well, it wasn't unusual. He was told, I know this from people in the background, you cut these scenes of child murder and drinking human blood and eating human beings in the ceremony or else. He didn't want to cut it. They were cut out at the studio after he died. So, ladies and gentlemen, Eyes Wide Shut. I would say this, maybe I should do a film, Lord willing, so he wants to put up the money, and I would basically say eyes wired shut, ears filled with, I'm making this up, ears filled with concrete, or ears sliced off, and mouth sealed. You know how they make shrunken heads in Ecuador? I think we've got shrunken heads, Doug. The first thing they do, I probably better not go into that, but they basically sew the lips shut, take the skin off the skull, put hot stones in it, it shrinks the skull, and then guess what? You got a shrunken head. Well, unfortunately, the shrinking heads are courtesy of Common Core. And I tell people, if they remember a children's cartoon series called Tom Terrific, it was on Captain Kangaroo, Yeah. You had, listen, my favorite guy, you had Krabby Appleton, rotten to the core, okay? Now you got Krabby Pressman, rotten to the core. The thing is that we are a nation, getting back to what I said earlier, we're a nation under divine judgment. So somebody said, well, God doesn't need weather modification, weather warfare. I said, no, of course he doesn't. But when evil men use it as a weapon against him, he takes the evil in their own devices. That's what the scripture says. Devices? He didn't say he takes them in their open speech. He didn't say he takes them in their open thoughts. He takes them in their own devices. So all of the stuff that we're seeing going on right now doesn't bode well for the Americas, both North and South America, because what's happened to Grand Bahama, just understand that Florida is an isthmus, I-S-T-H-M-U-S. There are other parts of the, obviously, East Coast that are very low-lying, even up into New York City. And when you understand the perforation of the coast, the limestone, the amount of holes that are there, I don't think most people are understanding the dire nature of, like, even their food production, their food consumption. Celeste, who we interviewed on your show, just is putting up daily. And Doug, I would encourage you to link to those